Well, it's that time we really go straight and see what the papers has for us on the dailies today. You do know it always kickstarts things right here on Viewpoint on Atlantic TV. And for review today, we have 6 papers. We have the Punch, the Vanguard, as much as the Nigerian Tribune, the Daily Sun, the Daily Trust, and the Nation will be wrapping things up. But you do always know that the Punch seems to start things off right here on the show today. And on the Punch this morning, the lead story reads, 10 battleground local governments that may decide Adeleke's Oyebamiji's race. And the riders to follow, Ife, Oshogbo, Iwo, Elisha, East, Odo, Oti, Oloruda, in focus as candidate mobilize heavyweight ahead of polls. Town hall meeting, Adeleke defense record, Oyebamiji, Salam unveils plan. ADC Salam banks on Regbeshola to spring surprise. 3 suspected party members killed as violence deepens. And we're still talking about the Osun election. Be rest assured, we'll be looking at that later on Dialogue as we look at the reign of violence, especially as it concerns not just only a Osun election, but also some talk at the political class for them to show that page 8 has that story. Let's see if we take some other leading stories, still on the front page of the Punch. Fubara lawmakers battle stores Rivers 1.85 trillion budget, and you can get that on page 9. No difference what's breaking Nigeria apart, and this is according to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, also on page 9. On page 35, passengers stranded at Union Ground Air Peace flight, quite disturbing. Yesterday was indeed a Celtic one at the Murtala Mohammed Airport. And Obasanjo OB demand major shakeup of democratic institution is still making the round on page 9. Let's see if we take some other leading ones. Still on the front page of the Punch. Police plan fresh security roadmap ahead of 2027 polls. It's also screaming on page 12, which many will say is necessary. 10 cops, 2 civilians killed as 17 bandits neutralized in Kebbi. That very sad story is on page 4 and 5 of the Punch newspaper. Modular refineries shun domestic crude over high cost is one making the rounds on page 20. And the story on page 12, that's also the picture of the day, is 224 dead, 700 injured as powerful earthquake rocks Colombia. And it's quite really disturbing. It looks as if it's just walking around the Latin American countries. Venezuela, we saw what happened. Now we're having that in Colombia. Well, our heart goes out to them. But that's much you can take from the Punch. Let's quickly run to Nigerian Tribune as we look at the dailies and try to make sense of all of them. Adeleke demands Osun senator's arrest, accuses him of calling for the killing of Accord members, says it's a matter of national security. I said kill Accord with vote, not violence. Father Hunsi explains and police to deploy over 10,000 personnel, especially as it concerns the Saturday elections in Osun State. But anyway, get more concerned. If you're really concerned about that, go read it up on page 3. Yes, Tinubu approves a deep offshore investment framework to unlock about $50 billion in new investment. It's also making the rounds on page 23. 10 police officers, 17 bandits killed in Zamfara Kebbi clash. It's also making a round on the Nigerian Tribune on page 13. Yeah, we seem to have others still on the front page of the Nigerian Tribune. And let's see if we take some other leading stories still on the Tribune. TUC demands 1,000 naira to dollar exchange rate, says stronger naira will cut food prices. And don't price out that story, but get it up on page 23. Nigeria to benefit from $100 billion investment in oil and gas and others is making a round on page 6. Millions of Nigerian children risk losing basic rights without birth certificate. This according to UNICEF on page 29. Sickle cell traits may hide diabetes. Ghana study warns on page 10. We're talking about health. ASU threatens strike over hazardous implementation of 2025 federal government ASU agreement, gives 21 universities 14 days ultimatum. And get more of that details on page 10. How devalued currency, debt pressure weigh on improvement in Nigerian's economy. I remember we looked at this yesterday on Dialogue, but I'll tell you to get more on page 7. No democracy in Africa, but forced liberal democracy. And this is according to former president Olusegun Obasanjo, and he's making that talk at the Goodluck Jonathan Foundation Democratic Lecture. But you can get that story up on page 22. The picture of the day is stranded passengers at the Murtala Mohammed Airport during the disruption of Air Peace operations by the aviation workers, and that just played out yesterday. Quite disturbing. But anyway, that's the much you can take from the Tribune. Let's quickly run to the Nation and see what the Nation has as a major one. Tinubu seeks stronger global action against insecurity. Says religion should promote human dignity, tolerance, says Yowada. And I'll just tell you to get more of that details because you can just get a grasp of it and take more on page 3. Aviation union strike cripples air travel. It's also making a round on page 2. But let's see if we take some other leading stories still on the front page of the Nation newspaper. Movement of cattle to be curtailed with 6 ranches. I hope that comes to reality. But get more of that story up on page 2. Government policies to unlock $50 billion deep offshore investment, which will be a better one for Nigerians on page 7. Bankers get FCCPC's warning over deceptive labeling. Is also making the rounds on page 25. NMDPRA crisis in Europe should not affect fuel prices in Africa. And I agree with them. But get that story up on page 7. Protests in Elisha over killing of 12 within 24 hours. Wow, that's quite disturbing. And we'll be looking at this later on Dialogue. But come on, well, we're just one state election, and we're having close to almost 30 persons killed. It's quite unfortunate. Oyetola left 15 billion naira, says Oyema Bamiji. Adeleke Father Husi clash as Adeleke Oyebaji Salam present manifesto at Town Hall, and get all of those details on page 6. Well, the picture of the day is that of the Okumbo as the late captain Aosa Okumbo, and you can see his family. They did more of getting him, or rather remembering him and all his great exploits he had, and many will say they are still missing him greatly. But that's the much you can take from the Nation newspaper. Let's quickly run to the next, which will be the Daily Trust. I trust you're still with us because definitely we still have more to give. Loses disruptions as labor union grant flights. And we're talking about what transpired yesterday, especially about Airpeace flight that was disrupted at the Murtala Mohammed Airport. But I'll tell you not to disturb yourself with that, but get more of it on page 3 and 4 of the Daily Trust. Nigerian democracy needs review. I'm not saying that Obasanjo and Jonathan seems to be thinking together on page 3. Sokoto, Kaduna, Adamawa, 10 others to experience flood in August, says Nimet. And remember, we looked at this critically last week on Dialogue, and please let them take heed of that warning on page 8. Osun governorship, CSO condemns Senators Father Hussi's call for violence. Is also making the round on page 13. Let's see if we take some other major ones. APC, ADC, NDC orders upload candidates as INEC short portal. Is also making the rounds on page 12. Tinubu Sultan asks Nigerians to unite against insecurity, and get more security news on page 5. Government to pay workers disengaged 20 years ago. Is also making the rounds on page 8. Federal government to rehabilitate 417 grazing reserves, which will be good, so we can get those cattle off the road. And you can see more of that on page 6. But the picture of the day is passengers stranded in Abuja and Lagos as unions disrupt flight operation. You can see how disturbing it is and how really frustrating for the passengers for that to happen just yesterday. That's the much you can take from the Daily Trust. Let's run to the Daily Sun newspaper. And on the Daily Sun this morning, Obasanjo Jonathan Obi expressed worry over state of a democracy as a former president says excessive judicial intervention in political affairs worrisome. And don't worry about that, but grab a copy of Daily Sun and get more of details on page 6. Atiku raises concern over outdated beavers and IRF. It's also making the round on page 6 as we get close to the 2027 general elections. Osun Adeleke demand arrest of Father Husi over kill them call. Alleged plot to kill Accord leaders. I mean kill them with votes, says Senator on page 26. Well, yes, we still have more to take, especially as concerns the Daily Sun. As other state varsities to prepare for strike over non-implementation of demand, affected branches directed to issue 14-day ultimatum to governors. And it's on page 6. Sultan APC chair, cleric warns against religious division as ADC condemns Jiga. And you can get that on page 27. Safe school, federal government strengthens security in vulnerable communities with man-o-war volunteers. Well, anyway, I hope that works. But get that more on page 9. 2027, ADC unveils Governor's Code, vows to play different politics. We'd like to see how that plays out on page 27. But the picture of the day is former President Olusegun Obasanjo, Goodluck Jonathan, and Patience Jonathan. Wow, it's been a while we saw her. Well, anyways, and Bala Muhammad of Bauchi State, the governor, and former Vice President Namadi Sambo, and a whole lot of others. Peter Obi is there, and who again we see no other but former Senate President Ayin Pius Ayin, and a whole lot of other dignitaries at during the 2026 Goodluck Jonathan Foundation Democracy Dialogue, and that happened yesterday in Bauchi. Well, anyway, we're just happy all of them are there and thinking of how to improve our democratic struggle and democratic journey. But anyway, that's the much we can take from the Daily. So let's quickly go to the last paper for review, which will be the Vanguard. And on the Vanguard this morning, candidates talk tough, unveils plans for states. I'm talking about Osun decides. I'm a bulldozer, not afraid of federal might. APC governor says Adeleke. Oyebamiji downplays federal might, vows to banish poverty. Will build on past governors' achievements, says Salam, and you know he's of the ADC. And controversy over Senator Fadosi's comment is still making the rounds on page 13. Let's see if we take some other leading one. Federal government backs regional petrol pricing benchmark for West Africa. This is a major one on page 20. And 2027 article raises concern over outdated beavers. And get more of that details on page 32. 5% TSC passengers stranded as unions protest ground flights in Lagos and Abuja. And while you can get more of that sad details on page 9. Infrastructural terrorism, house scavengers wreak havoc on public facilities. Yeah, a video making the round on social media shows a bridge that have been truly impeded or affected by all those scavengers. And indeed, I wonder when that madness will stop. But anyway, get the Vanguard and go to page 2 to get more full details on that. Well, anyway, we're still with the Vanguard, which is the last paper for us to look at. Incitements, CAN, PFN, HRSC, Kwankwaso knock Sheikh Jiga. And NHRC asks federal government to arrest, prosecute the Sheikh for hate speech, political choice, not threat, religious division is, CAN says. Government should be hard on religious extremists, says Pentecostal Fellowship of Nigeria, and decisive statement must be dealt with. This is according to Kwankwaso. But get that story up on page 5. PDP ADC kickers Cross River pegged presidential campaign odds at 150 million naira. Governorship 100 billion just for ad. Wow. Well, anyway, page 12 have more of that story. Federal government targets 6 flashpoints in new push to end farmers' headers clash. It's also making a round on page 7. Jonathan's 2015 sacrifice saved Nigeria's democracy, says Nadi Sambo. And you can get more of that details on page 12. ASU orders 20 varsities to prepare for strike, give federal government and state 14 days ultimatum. It's also making a round on page 9. But what's on page 30? Reform. Tinubu projects $50 billion revenue to unlock offshore investment. And well, anyway, let's see if we invest on Mr. and Mrs. Okay, let's see what Mrs. would always want to start with. And well, anyway, it's always interesting when we tend to look at what seems to be there as they give us every need to laugh and get some part of humor to follow. Okay, well, like I said, let's go to Mr. and Mrs. column. Mrs. said, I've warned him not to call my sister Agidi. She's not going to marry somebody who works in the forest. And Mr. had an answer to follow. Which forest? David works in Forex department of a big bank. Well, it looks as if Madame is confused between the normal forest and Forex as in concerns money. Well, anyway, I hope she doesn't know. She might switch over to, well, anyway, let's leave where she switches over to. But the picture of the day is that of no other person but former President Goodluck Jonathan, and also no other person but former President Olusegun Obasanjo. And you can see no other person but Bala Muhammad and at Bauchi during the Goodluck Jonathan Foundation Democracy Dialogue in Bauchi. And remember, that played out yesterday. And well, that's the much we can take from the Vanguard and all the papers put together. You do know.